Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 111 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today's in-between episode is going to be called In Defense of Psychology. So if you've listened to the past few podcast episodes, I've been sort of hinting that I've been wanting to do a sort of rant because psychology is so disrespected. So today I finally decided that I'm actually going to do it, because if you listen to last Monday's episode, so episode 110, then what you would have heard is me hinting and actually getting quite passionate about a bit. We're towards the end of the podcast episode, so I really wanted to address this and actually do my rant episode. So that's if you're feeling that just because you study psychology, you're being disrespected and you're not being liked, and all of the other stigmatized rubbish that we have to face as psychology students or psychology professionals, then you're going to love today's episode. It's really good, and it will make you feel that you're not alone in this, because none of us are. And because this is an in-between episode, there isn't a sponsored product for today's episode. But I always have lots of books on every single area of psychology, basically. I've written quite a lot of them now, and they're always available on all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and the hardback, and sometimes the large print version if I forgot one, from Amazon, your local bookstore and local library if you requested. And if you enjoy today's episode and you want to give me a bit of one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So let's dive into today's episode. In Defense of Psychology. So the reason why I wanted to do today's episode was because I read this great article in the Psychologist magazine by the British Psychological Society, and it was this wonderful clinical psychologist talking about how psychology was still not classed as a facilitating subject. And I really wanted to build on this because the entire point of the article was to sort of say, wake up everyone, psychology is a great topic and it isn't this fake made up pseudoscience that everyone thinks it is. Psychology is a science, and now I want to do my sort of own take on it, but I want to recap on the article first. So in this article, she was saying that even Oxford University does not class psychology as a facilitating subject. And I think she sort of forget that not everyone would know what I mean, but what it basically means is that it's a sort of a critical thinking a subject that's really good, and basically psychology is not on par with biology, chemistry and physics, which people always think are the proper sciences. And that makes me so annoyed, because psychology, we study the scientific method. We have very, very strong ethical guidelines. And to be honest, we have probably some of the most stringent methodologies or some of the most stringent procedures in place, simply because we know every single bit of research has to be good, because psychology is so criticised and so disliked in the wider section, especially when it comes to academia. Because if you walk into a room and say you're a psychology student, people will very much not understand what you're talking about, and they will sort of go, oh, psychology. Oh, so you're not really a proper scientist. You don't actually do science, do you? You just make up stuff. You just do predictions. And this is something else that I hate about profiling, was people, and because of the media, books and TV programs, people think that profiling is what psychology does. And as I talk about in my criminal profiling book, because of what FBI profiling is not scientific in the slightest, and it's actually absolute rubbish, people think that psychology is also rubbish, and they have no idea that we apply the scientific method to everything. Like, we have our methods, we have our scientific methods. We know how to write up a report. We know how to manipulate variables. We know how to do all of this scientific stuff, and we do it. We do it well. Psychology would not have lasted 100 years. Well, to be honest, as I mentioned in my biological psychology book, psychology has been about in 1 or 2 incarnations since 500 BC with Aristotle. So psychology would not have lasted this long if there was not at least some interest in it and some science. And something else that I talk about in my biological psychology book, because I go into the history of psychology, is that there were a few different incarnations of different aspects of our psychology. For example, Phenology, I probably butchered the pronunciation, which was the so-called scientific study of different shapes of the brain and different lumps and bumps of the skull pertained to different abilities that people had. That did not last long because it was not scientific, but psychology is, and that is why psychology has lasted long. So that's my sort of thing about that aspect. But another aspect is that you've got biology, you've got the proper sciences, which are so amazing and so wonderful. So biologists, they find out that smoking causes cancer. That is perfectly fine. It's very true. Okay, what do you do? What do you do to stop people smoking? You can't use biology because unless you can invent some sort of hormone or some sort of drug that affects a person on a biological level to stop smoking. Okay, so what do? You use psychology. You use what we know about human behaviour, because that is what psychology is. Psychology is the study of human behaviour, and we are experts on it. We know what affects behaviour. We know how to get people to behave in certain ways to some extent. So you get psychologists to come up with a way to help people stop smoking, and we draw on different areas. We draw on the social aspects. We draw on the cognition. We draw on how people think about it and how to make people stop. Without psychology, you cannot do any of this public health stuff. And speaking of public health, one of the biggest things that has annoyed me during the pandemic is the way how you stop a virus is you modify people's behaviour. Of course, in addition to the biological aspects like the vaccines and everything. So you get people to socially distance, you get people to wear masks, you get people to wash their hands and do other behaviours that protects themselves and others. So logic would dictate that you get psychologists to help. And yes, I know of at least one psychologist that is in SAGE, which is the advisory group to the government when it comes to emergencies. But when it comes to the news, and when you're trying to explain stuff to normal people who don't go to university and don't study psychology, why do you get medical doctors talking about human behaviour? I don't understand that. If I become a doctor, I would not talk about medical problems. I would not talk about cancer because that is not what I know. So why are these medical doctors who are amazing experts on cancer, the cold, diseases, viruses, talking about human behaviour? I don't understand it. And the only answer I have is that psychology is seen as fake, and people don't want to hear what psychologists have to say on the subject. And that just breaks my heart because I know psychology is amazing. I know psychology can help so many amazing people improve their lives. And I don't know how to put what I'm feeling into words. I love psychology. I know how great it is. I know how well it can help people. If I did not know that psychology was this great, I would not be doing this podcast for as long as I have. I would not be writing as many books as I have on psychology. But I want to share this with people. I want people to know that psychology is fun, amazing, really interesting, and people can learn so much. But again, because of how the media spins it, and how the older people and the older doctors, the people in charge, the people who make decisions, they don't believe in psychology, so others don't. Psychology does not get the trust and faith that it deserves. For example, if you look at governments, if you look at the people in charge of hospitals and who make decisions about mental health care and mental health departments, most of them are old, white, middle-class men who, I'm very sad to say, don't believe in mental health. Some of them do. Tons of people are amazing, but lots of people, not just men, not just white, middle-class people, tons of people don't believe in mental health. And this just is so terrible because then the money is not put where it's needed and the services aren't changed and reorganised in a way that makes mental health a lot easier, because mental health works with physical health. I've spoken about this in my health psychology book and in my formulation in psychology book. There are tons of chapters on it. I've quoted research. I've quoted places that actually are doing it and how much better the patients feel and how much better mental health is actually getting treated there. But again, unless people care about mental health and until they trust in psychology, this is never going to happen and people are never going to get the help they need. So I just think this is such a shame. And what I'm trying to say is that if you feel like this, if you feel like people are disrespecting you when it comes to psychology, you aren't alone. There are so many people who are facing the exact same challenge of you. And I've also said on the podcast before that because I do psychology, because I love mental health and I believe in it and I want to help people, I have been judged so harshly, sometimes by certain members of my own family, because they think I'm wasting my time. I'm doing this weird little fantasy degree that isn't going to help people, that I'm not going to get paid in, that I'm not going to do anything with my life in. And that has sort of been like, what? And it's just like, why would you say that? You don't know what you're talking about. Psychology is not profiling, and I can make a difference. People in psychology can make a difference, whether it's clinical psychology, cognitive psychology, business psychology. Psychology can be applied to every single little aspect of life because it's human behaviour, and everything comes down to behaviour. So to be honest, psychology should be on par with biological physics and chemistry because it's so important. It touches everything. Physics might cover everything in the universe. Biology might cover everything to do with living things. And chemistry might do everything chemical related. I think I've just covered them really broadly. But anyway, though. But psychology covers everything to do with our behaviour. Whenever humans do something, that is down to us. The remit of psychology I absolutely love because it allows us to cover everything. Anything that is even remotely related to human behaviour, we can research, we can do something about. Other social sciences can't necessarily do it. And that is what I love about psychology. Not only can it help so many amazing people improve their lives, but we can explore anything we want because psychology is so broad. Is it a challenge? Yes. Is it this silly little thing that, but that is only a fancy? No. Psychology is not a fancy. Psychology is not made up. Psychology is not fake. It's not this little pseudoscience. Profiling is. And yes, psychology has had a checkered past because of ethical procedures, the Milgram study, and everything that is so hyped up by the media and other people, that what psychology really is, how caring psychology is, how much psychologists love people and want to help them, that is what gets overmissed. So what I want to leave you for today's episode is just that you are not alone. Just because you do psychology does not make you this weird little person who is just trying to live out their little fancy and do this little made-up degree and do nothing with your life. You aren't that. You are an amazing person who wants to help people, who wants to learn. And that, I want to say, well done. You are amazing. I cannot stress that enough. So, to be honest, download this, save this for whenever you experience these hard times. Because I feel like you're going to need it. I am, and I feel so much better for doing this episode. So, thank you for listening. You are amazing, and have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.